When you look at today's gaming industry, you see many studios making huge impacts on the medium. CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk was announced as a Switch 2 launch title and has sold over 30 million copies. Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year in 2023, and Warhorse Studios' Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was just announced as one of the most influential games of all time. Alongside From Software and Rockstar, these studios are currently dominating the landscape, whereas games like Bethesda's Starfield, Bioware's Dragon Age the Veilguard, and Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Shadows are generally rejected by the gaming community. Although each game maintains a dedicated fanbase, the majority of the gaming world no longer are impressed by their performance. Videos come out every day about The Witcher 3, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, showcasing new features, hidden secrets and fan appreciation. Videos are made on Assassin's Creed Shadows, Dragon Age the Veilguard and Starfield, usually only to vent frustration, but then swiftly forgotten. CD Projekt Red, Larian and Warhorse are the new successful RPG studios of today. But if you're new to gaming, you may be surprised to know that just 14 years ago, these studios were nowhere to be found. Instead, the RPG market was dominated by Ubisoft, Bioware, and, of course, Bethesda. The landscape has completely flipped on its head. In today's video, I will tell the story of how those studios started, how they grew, and why complacency, greed, and the search for the ever-elusive broader audience cost those studios and allowed today's big hitters to sneak in and steal the market right from under them. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Quick side note, if you're new here and you have a huge passion for gaming and gaming discussions, please consider subscribing. So, let's rewind the clocks and let's go back to 2002. Bethesda Game Studios had recently undergone a huge transition, with many key members of staff leaving, placing Mr. Todd Howard at the head of game design. After releasing two procedurally generated open world games in The Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall, Todd did away with that design, opting instead to release one handcrafted open world. This game was The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. The game impressed gamers at its release with its vast open world, deep lore, and unprecedented freedom of choice. Players were blown away by how they could go anywhere, join various factions, and shape their own story in a richly detailed alien fantasy setting. The game went on to sell 4 million copies, and fans loved it for its RPG freedom. Then in 2004, Ubisoft released Far Cry 1, which was a linear action game. It reviewed well enough, but it was not in the open world RPG genre at this point. In 2006, Bethesda released a sequel entitled Oblivion. Although the game scaled back its freedom and had weaker RPG elements, the game improved in other ways, including its better graphics, more detailed open world, voice-acted quest lines, and NPC schedules. The game for its time shocked the world, and it received stellar reviews from major critics, and it sold 9.5 million copies. It also went on to win Game of the Year in 2006. Bethesda at this point had established themselves as the biggest and greatest game developer when it came to RPGs, at least commercially. The following year, CD Projekt Red released The Witcher 1. Many fans thought it was a good game. It combined some entertaining and fast-paced combat with a well-realized world and pretty decent story that branched and can end in 3 different fashions. Although its graphics were far from perfect, it scored well overall. The game sold around 1 million copies, but it snuck under the radar when you compared it to Bethesda's releases. This same year, Bioware entered the fray, releasing the critically acclaimed Mass Effect 1. Fans loved the game for its deep lore, great writing, strong voice acting, and massive RPG decision making, which generally impacted the game's world. The game scored nearly perfect from major reviewers and became a fan favourite. In this very same year, Assassin's Creed 1 released to huge fan admiration. Although the game didn't review as well, it found a huge crowd at the time who loved its take on the open world playing the role of an assassin. The characters within the story also left an impression. Despite reviewing as the worst of the entries so far, it actually sold the most with 8 million copies. Now in 2008, Bethesda acquired the Fallout IP from Interplay and they released their own take on the post-nuclear RPG with Fallout 3. Following the same blueprint as Oblivion, but with new weapons in a new setting, the game was a huge success. Not only did it almost win Game of the Year in 2008, but it sold over 12 million copies. Bethesda had gone free for free. This same year, Ubisoft released Far Cry 2, which was so different to the original Far Cry, instead opting to tackle the open world genre. It reviewed well and sold well. 1 year later, in 2009, Bioware released a new series after Mass Effect, called Dragon Age, with Origins being the first installment. This game scored incredibly well and sold over 3 million copies. Set in a fantasy world different to Mass Effect, Bioware had shown that they could create well-written stories with deep decision making in different settings. Bioware had now gone 2 for 2 and established themselves as one of the best studios in the RPG genre. Assassin's Creed 2 also released this year and improved on everything lacking in the first game. IGN gave it an 8.9 and Metacritic a 90 out of 100. At this point, Ubisoft had also shown that they were here to stay and had 2 strong IPs in Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. 2010 gave us Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and Mass Effect 2, which in particular did really well and improved so much on the first game. It is considered a fan favourite. And then, in 2011, we received Skyrim, which is considered one of the greatest RPGs of all time. Bethesda were 4 for 4, and were now the biggest RPG developer by a long shot. We also received Dragon Age 2 and Assassin's Creed Revelations from Bioware and Ubisoft respectively. CD Projekt Red also released The Witcher 2 this year, and it scored incredibly well for its writing, RPG decision making and world design. But it was still a linear game, and was still under the radar compared to the big hitters that I just referenced. 2012 brought Mass Effect 3, which continued to sell well and improve upon its previous entry, and it completed the Mass Effect trilogy, closing a chapter for Bioware. In 2012, Ubisoft brought out Far Cry 3, which is strongly considered to be the greatest Far Cry game to date. Its story, open world, main characters, looking at you, Voss, shocked the gaming world and showed how far that IP had come. It sold over 10 million copies and almost got perfect scores from all established reviewers. The following year, Ubisoft released Black Flag, which performed exactly the same with high reviews, high sales, and is considered the best in the Assassin's Creed series, a fan favourite. In 2014, Bioware released Dragon Age Inquisition, which went on to win Game of the Year, marking Bioware's biggest achievement to date. So at this point in time, we have had Far Cry 3, the best Far Cry, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the best Assassin's Creed, and Skyrim, Bethesda's most successful entry. We've also had Mass Effect 3 and 2014's Game of the Year, Dragon Age Inquisition. In 2014, this very moment was Bioware's, Ubisoft's, and even Bethesda's peak. And when you're at the top, there's only one way to go: down. Now before we go on to the next point, just a quick word from today's video sponsor, Instant Gaming, and they save you money on video games. Due to the fact they get their keys directly from the source, they're able to offer games for far less than retail value. They have over 700,000 reviews on Trustpilot and a 4.7 out of 5-star rating. They do exactly what they say. For example, here you can get the Monster Hunter Wilds new game, normally £70, here for just $40.16. Or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is normally £70, here for just $39.17. or the recently released Split Fiction, which is a brilliant time by the way if you have a friend to play it with, normally £60, here for just $36.58. You buy a few games through Instant Gaming and in the long term it saves you a lot. That way you can have extra money to play other games. And it's super easy to use. You pick your game, pick your platform, make your purchase, and then you'll get your code. Enter your code in on your preferred system and there you go. There's your game. So if you want to save money on video games whilst also supporting the channel, click on the first link down in the description. And thank you to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video. So in 2014, Bioware, Bethesda and Ubisoft are at the top of the charts. They're releasing hit after hit and have just all released their best entries to date, won multiple Game of the Year awards. And then, in 2015, along comes Todd Howard and releases Fallout 4. With improved graphics, more crisp combat, and an even bigger world, it seemed destined for Bethesda's reign to continue. It seemed that surely Todd Howard would guide them to another Game of the Year victory. But then, something astonishing happened. CD Projekt Red released their next game, The Witcher 3. The game amazed gamers in 2015 with its massive, beautifully handcrafted open world, rich storytelling and morally complex choices. Players were especially drawn to the emotionally driven quests, memorable characters, and the way that even side stories and quests felt just as meaningful and impactful as most games' main quests. This game changed gaming forever. I did a video on it here if you want to see more details, but the bottom line is it elevated standards. Mass Effect had great decision making, but less of an open world. Skyrim had a beautiful open world, but bland writing and fetch quests. Ubisoft had open worlds and decent stories, but its open world activities were repetitive, and its worlds felt empty. Witcher 3 took the formula and beat them all, excelling in every aspect. Its main story was as emotional as any of those games. Its side quests were better than all of them. Its decision making was just as good as Mass Effect's, but also on a larger scale. Its open world was even more impressive than Skyrim's. Its combat and open world activities were more impressive than both Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. 2015 Game of the Year awards came along, and Todd Howard was so sure that he'd win with Fallout 4 that he released a Game of the Year edition. But he could only sit in his chair in silence while CDPR pipped Fallout 4 to the title with The Witcher 3. This was, in my opinion, the day that gaming changed forever. Fans' expectations had moved up. Now we could have a giant open world game with an amazing well-written story, with deep RPG decision-making mechanics and interesting open world activities. The bar had been raised. We no longer had to settle for just one of those four things. We could now have it all. And this was the moment that gaming changed forever. The first studio to start to fall off was Bioware, when in 2017 they released the next Mass Effect game, Andromeda. Fans of Mass Effect were disappointed with the game due to its weak story, bland characters, and a lack of emotional depth and cohesion that defined the original trilogy. Technical issues, awkward animations, and a less compelling new setting further hurt its reception, making it feel like a step backward rather than a fresh start. Fast forward to 2018 and things started to get worse. For the next few years, Ubisoft would release Assassin's Creed Revelations, Rogue, Unity, and Syndicate. The games did okay, but they never really amazed. The formula had started to grow stale. Far Cry 4 and 5 were decent entries, but nowhere near the standard of the third game. At this point, Ubisoft decided it was time to change the Assassin's Creed formula, and they wanted to attempt to copy a game that they considered the example. That game? The Witcher 3. For the next few years, they released Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, which were so similar to The Witcher 3's blueprint that it's impossible not to notice. But due to their poor writing, repetitive open-world activities, and insistence on inserting microtransactions, these games never reached the standards of the game that they tried to emulate. It still brought them huge success, but many found their games to be as wide as an ocean and as deep as a puddle. What The Witcher 3 had done is show fans that they could have the width of a giant open world, but that it could also contain hugely rich content in every corner. Ubisoft just couldn't do it, and Far Cry 5 released alongside Odyssey in 2018, and although both sold well, their formula was beginning to get old. And then, in this same year, we saw the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, which once again blew other games out the water. Like The Witcher 3 before it, this game raised standards of what a gamer could expect from an open world game. It had the giant open world, but it also had the depth as well. Hugely compelling emotional story, interesting world activities, and so many RPG mechanics that the player could experience. It once again showed the gap between Ubisoft's entries in the open world genre. This same year, a little unknown publisher released their own game called Kingdom Come Deliverance. Warhorse Studios was founded in 2011, but they had to turn to crowdfunding in order to secure enough funds just to make the game. And then in 2018, they released it. Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 had many teething issues, but fans could still see the magic. Due to time and budget constraints, Warhorse couldn't make the full game they wanted to, but they still managed to release a full game which scored well. It sold over 8 million copies and scored very well as established a strong loyal fan base. It had the giant open world, but managed to contain a well-written story with deep decision making and great RPG mechanics and world activities. At this point, Ubisoft's open world games were way down the pecking order. Red Dead Redemption 2, Witcher, and Kingdom Come Deliverance were better, and gamers started to realise just how bland and lifeless the worlds of Assassin's Creed and Far Cry started to feel. They felt artificial, big for the sake of it, full of repetitive activities. These other games managed to bring both quantity and quality. This was the beginning of the end for Ubisoft. They had tried to keep up with the standards of these games, but they just couldn't do it. Bioware had fumbled their most successful IP in Mass Effect when they released Andromeda, but they switched gears in 2019 and released Anthem. It was badly received after launch due to its repetitive gameplay, shallow story, and lack of meaningful endgame content. Fans expected BioWare's signature storytelling, but they got a live service game that felt unfinished and directionless, with technical issues and design flaws compounding the disappointment. At this point, both BioWare and Ubisoft were falling behind quickly, unable to keep up with the new standards that had been set by CD Projekt Red, Warhorse, and Rockstar. But surely Bethesda could keep up. They were the best. Unfortunately, not. They followed the pattern of BioWare and went for the online market, releasing Fallout 76 in 2019. Now, I've done many videos on this topic here, but essentially the game released in a terrible state, but even after patches sorted it out, it still fell way short of expectations. It was an online MMORPG. The world felt empty, the activities were extremely repetitive, and it felt so far removed from the RPGs that Bethesda had been releasing a decade before. It felt like a cash grab, and despite Fallout 4 selling 25 million copies, 76 sold around 1.4 million, which is less than 10%. BioWare and Bethesda had turned their back on their fans, chasing the online market and cash that those type of games generated. They were no longer making the offline RPGs that got them to where they were. They wanted the money of the online market. In 2020, CD Projekt Red released Cyberpunk 2077, and despite its initial rocky launch, the game has gone on to establish itself as one of the greatest RPGs of all time. CD Projekt Red were now 2 for 2. From Software, known for the Dark Souls series, decided that they would have a crack at open world games in 2022. The result? A Game of the Year victory and Elden Ring, which is now considered one of the greatest games of all time. And then, in 2023, Larian Studios released Baldur's Gate 3. Fans loved this game for its deep role-playing, engaging story, and the freedom to approach situations in creative Dungeons & Dragon inspired ways. Its rich character interactions, Impactful choices and polished turn-based combat made it feel like a true modern success to classic RPGs, exceeding expectations in both depth and quality. But Bethesda saw the challenge and decided they were going to match it with their own offline RPG entry. They would go back to what they did best. The Elder Scrolls? Fallout? Neither. They released a new IP, Starfield, but the magic was gone. The overall game mechanics seemed extremely dated at this point, with lots of loading screens, boring combat, and a boring open world. The handcrafted world was replaced by procedurally generated content, but each planet looked uninspired. Dungeons were copy and paste. Quests were dull and repetitive. The story, predictable and short. They had gone the same way as Ubisoft in that they went for quantity over quality. Quests were procedurally generated, repetitive and boring. Bethesda had now also shown they just couldn't keep up, and didn't even receive a nomination for Game of the Year in 2023, with the prize going to Baldur's Gate 3. 1 year later, Bioware released Dragon Age the Veilguard. The game faced rejection due to its shift to real-time combat and simplified mechanics, which alienated fans of the original series. The writing was lackluster, safe, and boring. The gameplay seemed simplified, and its open world was more linear than ever. They had changed their entire model in order to appeal to a more modern audience, the same one they tried to find with Anthem, but that audience never connected with it, and longtime fans didn't enjoy it. The cartoony graphics, the boring dialogue, and inconsequential decisions sealed its fate. The game flopped, and Bioware had now failed 3 times in a row. Ubisoft had released Valhalla in 2020, Avatar in 2023, Far Cry 6 in 2024, Star Wars Outlaws the same year, and Assassin's Creed Mirage in the same year again. Each underperformed, with fans still complaining about their open worlds feeling repetitive, boring, and that the writing felt uninspired. With the company really struggling, Ubisoft threw everything on the success of Assassin's Creed Shadows, released just recently, and new game, same problems. Nothing, it appears, was learned. A beautiful open world game with nothing to do but repetitive copy-paste tasks. Its failure was even further compounded by Warhorse's earlier release of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which managed to improve on every single thing that the first game lacked. Better graphics, better story, better side quests, and just more to do. It is one of the greatest games of all time, a clear contender for Game of the Year this year, and was just recently voted as one of the most influential games of all time. Once again providing both quantity and quality. And so here we are today, with CD Projekt Red, Warhorse and Larian Studios, as well as other studios, currently receiving huge success and appreciation, whilst Ubisoft is selling its ownership in order to survive. Bioware has failed so many times that fans no longer trust them, and Bethesda have become a bit of a laughingstock for their arrogance and lack of awareness. Those 3 studios dominated for years, but then in 2015, everything changed. The Witcher 3 released and changed what could be expected from an open world game and writing in video games as well. Not only could these studios not keep up with the new standards that were being set in the industry, but they also turned their backs on their own fans. Why? Money. Bioware released Anthem, hoping to get that online money. Bethesda, the same with Fallout 76, and Ubisoft implements so many microtransactions into their games that it's not even funny. But whilst these studios experimented on new ideas in order to gain more riches, the gaming world still wanted offline RPGs. EA said that offline games are dead. Ubisoft said we should get used to not owning the games that we actually buy. Bethesda said fans don't want good storytelling in their games.
And they're never going to see your story. Because the story is there, right? But they are going to spend 30 hours making shacks. Okay?
Videos on all these topics are available in the description, but fans like me, we were still hungry for the good offline RPGs, no matter what these studios told us. CD Projekt Red came in and offered us 2 beautiful games, Larian presented us with an amazing D&D entry. Warhorse just gave us one of the greatest RPGs of all time. These studios didn't go off chasing short-term cash and instead focused on providing the greatest product that they could. They gave us rich open worlds, beautifully written stories with deep RPG mechanics. They made games that would be loved by gamers rather than chasing the latest online trend. They didn't worry about monthly battle passes, cosmetic DLCs or online subscriptions. They didn't try to make a game as wide as an ocean with procedurally generated quests and world building. What they decided to do will blow your mind. They focused on making a good game. They focused on giving the players as good an experience as possible in the video game. Crazy concept, I know, but that's what they decided to do. As a result, Cyberpunk just sold over 30 million copies. Witcher 3 and Baldur's Gate 3 are considered two of the greatest video games of all time, and both won Game of the Year awards. And Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, well, let's just say it's made an impression. I've done so many videos on how great it is here. But the point is, the RPG fanbase were abandoned by their favourite studios and have now been picked up by new studios who are happy to serve them exactly what they want. Ubisoft, Bioware and Bethesda led the industry for years, but over the years, they became complacent. As standards rose in video games, particularly in open world depth and writing, they ignored that, opting to focus on microtransactions and never-ending AI-generated content. Rather than writing 10 good side quests, the AI gave players thousands of fetch quests that never end. Whilst chasing an audience that didn't connect with their games, as they were busy playing Call of Duty and Fortnite, they ended up satisfying nobody. And as a result of all this, the old guard has been replaced. Now when we see new games released by Ubisoft, Bethesda and Bioware, the most established game reviewers always are disappointed. And when CD Projekt Red, Larian or Warhorse release a new game, they spend hours gushing about how special their games are. Those studios care about their fans and have placed player satisfaction as their number one priority. They didn't place money as the top priority, whereas the old guard did. And what's the most ironic thing about this? The old guard are all going under, barely hanging on, taking huge financial losses on each game. And these newer studios are making fortunes. So the irony is, in an attempt to chase money, the old guard didn't make any. Dragon Age the Veilguard cost $250 million to make, Assassin's Creed Shadows $150 million. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 cost just $40 million and is a much better game than both of those. In the present day, the old guard is out and the new studios are in. They have been replaced and we're living in a new era. So what about the future? Well, EA came out and said that Dragon Age the Veilguard failed only because it wasn't live servicey enough. Video here. And Ubisoft just keep flushing out the same game, ignoring any type of feedback, and their developers openly criticized Elden Ring despite the praise it received from gaming community. And Bethesda have doubled down on Fallout 76, charge money for mods that used to be free, and constantly talk about how their fans don't want what they say they want. They replied to all negative feedback on Starfield by telling fans that they were wrong. They told fans they were wrong to be upset at 76. They said fans don't want good stories because they want to spend hours building shacks. So in summary, I wouldn't get my hopes up for any of these studios making a comeback. They had their time. They had all the money, the power and success, and had the gaming industry in their hands. But due to complacency, greed and arrogance, they let it slip. And now, I don't see any way back, especially not when you see the gap between Assassin's Creed Shadows, Starfield and Dragon Age the Veilguard, and then you compare that to Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3 and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. The gap is too big now and only growing further. But anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you guys think? Do you agree with my assessment? Or do you think the complete opposite? Out of all these studios, which one do you think has the best catalogue? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, please take the time to give it the thumbs up, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great, and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out.